Hello. Here we are again, Mama Liz training on Tuesday. And today we have our special presenter, Mr. Tim Rogers. I think everybody knows Tim.
No.
And before we get started, one of the things that he's going to talk about today is share with you, if you get a home inspection and they have 44 or 45 items on that home inspection, what do you do? How do you advise your client to move forward or not? Or do you advise your clients anything? But he'll address that. And that 44, 45 items inspection report has been uploaded to the website. So anybody that's watching it live on AgentOwnedTV.com can download it and take a look at it while Tim's talking about it. And I'm not sure if Tim's going to talk about that first or last, but I've asked Tim to talk about that and also to talk to you guys about basically what does an experienced agent like Tim wish you new agents would not do. And then the other thing I asked him, which was not in the topic, but I asked him yesterday if he would address, you've got clients in the car and you're showing them lots of property, 20, 30, 10 houses, whatever, and you have a feeling, well, as Tim said, if they're from up north, they'd probably go lowball. They have that mindset.
Southerners lowball.
Southerners do too, okay. But if you think they're going to do that, then how would you handle that? And he's going to address that as well. So Tim, go for it.
Okay, well, I think the first thing was on the home inspection stuff, right?
Right.
And I just saw this summary, and obviously the first thing that jumps out is there's 45 items on here. Now, I don't know when, I'm assuming it was somebody's seller that got this summary back, is that right? And so somebody's buyer sent an inspector out.
Someone's buyer.
Yeah, someone's buyer sent an inspector out. No.
The buyer.
The buyer sent an inspector out. Gotcha. There was a buyer inspection on one of our listings, right? And then, so there, in this case, I guess there was not a buyer's agent involved. It was just a buyer.
Not our listing.
It was her buyer.
It was your buyer. I gotcha. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I asked Jill if we could share her experience.
Okay, so this is our client, and we get and our client's inspector gives us 45 things.
Yes.
Which in reading through it, just skimming it, there's 10 or 12 things in here that are vague and subjective at best.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, at best.
Okay.
There's another 6 or 7 in here. I don't even know what the heck he's trying to say. So I don't know if there's another page where there's greater detail.
Well, there's a whole inspection report.
Sure. But then your poor buyer gets this, and it's like, oh my God, look at all this stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
And a lot of these things really don't. The dryer vent cover is damaged. Is that the little thing that comes outside the house and it vents outside and the cover has a crack in it?
Yes.
Or is it something that's prohibiting the dryer from venting to the exterior of the house? That's an issue. Right. The cover itself being cracked, that's 75 cents at Lowe's. Okay? So what you have to ask yourself when you look at these and when you go through them with your buyer or with your seller, and I love it when it's our seller and a well-meaning buyer's agent sends me immediately the whole inspection and says, here's the inspection report, please fix all of it. Okay. At which point I'm like, excuse me, come again? Because number one, when you get that, it tells you the agent doesn't really have a lot of clue, because why would they send me the whole report right away without some detail? They probably haven't even read it when they do that. They don't know what they're sending in. They're check marking the box.
That's why I
sending it down the road. But
our agents never to do that.
In this case, yeah, that if it's your buyer, we don't send the whole inspection to the seller right off the rip. You know what? You're giving them $400, $450 if they don't do anything. But you got to give them enough for what you're asking for. And when it's your buyer and you get all this stuff, you kind of have to go through it with your buyer and get that home inspector on the phone and say, which of these items really are things that need to be addressed, and which of these things do you see every day in homes of this age? If this is a 2012 built home, then you're going back to the builder.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a national regional builder that's still got signs all over town and promoting, you're calling their warranty department. and you're calling them again and again and again, and they'll have somebody out there Tuesday, because they don't want you calling them again and again and again.
Okay.
If it's an older home, then a lot of these are typical defects you might find. The more significant things that you might want to look at is where he talks about something with the fireplace flue is insulated, and it shouldn't be, he says, the furnace flue should not be insulated, period. Fire hazard. Okay, you want the home inspector to define what the problem is there. You know, anything that's a fire hazard, anything that's potential electrical issue, if there's a structural issue, they find the roof shingles cracked, the edge shingles cracked, they get that.
Okay.
They get that because you want to have a good edge on the shingles.
Okay.
And then again, is broken edge shingles at the end of the day? Probably not. How bad did you beat the seller up?
I put in, asked them to repair 20 of the 45 items.
Right. So that's probably, looking at this, probably reasonable. You can show them all 45 items on here and say, look, we only want 20.
Well, I made the mistake that I talked to her first, but I have already sent my $450 thing.
Well, the buyer said it was.
Yeah, the buyer said it was okay, because we thought the same thing, like, at least they showed pictures of what was going on. But of the 20 items, I still felt like it was a lot to ask for. It is not a new home, it is a 16-year-old home.
Right. So
Right.
a lot of these things, it comes down to really managing expectations up front, okay? If it's a 15, 16, 20, 30-year-old home,
Okay.
and you feel like you've done your homework, and you've shown your buyer that you've got them a good price compared to where the market is,
Mm-hmm.
that you want to get a home inspection done so there, in case there's something that the everyday person can't see. Okay, you're looking for a hidden defect that could be a deal breaker.
Right.
That's really what you're doing, and you tell your buyer you're going to get a laundry list of things that are going to be maintenance items for you.
Right.
But we beat this seller up pretty good. Now we're going to get this inspection report back, and it's going to be like a New York City phone book. But I want you to know up front that we're going to go through it. And we're going to pick out the things that the reasonable person would expect to fix. That seller, that well-meaning seller, probably didn't think about some of this stuff because they've been there for so long. You know, and so you kind of have to prep your buyer up front because you're going to get a bunch of stuff back from home inspectors. All right?
Especially older houses.
Especially on older houses. And then there's some home inspectors out there. I mean, you know, back in the old days, you know, I used to talk about you had nitpick Ned and you had phone it in Fred. You know,
Okay.
you don't want either one of them.
Right.
You don't want the dude that's just phoning it in. He's there for an hour and a half and he gives you a report because that's not anything valuable to your buyer. And you don't want the guy that's nitpicking everything and reinventing everything and calling for an engineer on every piece of trim above a door that looks like it might need a bead of caulk. Okay, because they're just taking apart deals and justifying their exorbitant bill. But you got to try to find inspectors that have experience and have done it for a period of time. Preferably, they have a residential builder's or a general contractor's license. If they've got a home inspector's license only and they've just gotten started in the business, what did they do before?
Okay.
If they were selling copiers, maybe you want to get somebody else to do your home inspection.
Okay.
You know, if they worked on a construction crew and they have some background and they've completed the home inspection thing, but it's really better if they've got an actual builder's license to go with their home inspection license. If they have a builder's license, I think I'm correct, they don't have to have a home inspector's license.
I think that's correct.
I think a residential builder or a general contractor license allows them to do a home inspection. Most regular builders don't want to do it. A builder that's buying a house for a renovation project, a contractor, a lot of times will get a home inspection done just to have stuff to go back to the seller on, one. And two, because it's stuff they don't normally look at. When in the easy days when they could go in and you know, wave their hand and get 6 construction loans and get all of them to fund the land clearing that day.
Right.
Then they were building new houses. They didn't worry about it, but now a lot of them are renovation contractors. or at least the past few years. Now there's loans coming back, but a lot of your old spec builders became renovators. Hell, they never had to look. They didn't know how to look at an older house. So a lot of those guys would get a home inspection done, and that's usually wise.
So Tim, if you got a list like this, and it's, Jill's not gonna be the only one, this happens that I asked her if she could use, we could use her, but, not abuse her, but just use her. But I guess the point I was hoping we could make with the agents is, if you get something like this, you suggest getting with the buyer, if you represent the buyer, and going through it piece by piece.
Well, yes, I suggest you preface it up front with the buyer before the inspection ever starts, before you ever get ratified. Look, what you're, you know, when you put a contract on a house, let's say, what I tell buyers all the time, what you're committing to is you're committing to that period of time where the contract says you have the privilege and responsibility of having the property inspected, blah, 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 blah. But it's the privilege and responsibility, it's the buyer's privilege and responsibility.
Right.
So you're not committing to, don't get emotionally attached, okay, until after the home inspection, right? Because you're going to find stuff, if we find something serious out, we might just walk away. I've had inspectors call me in the first 45 minutes and be like, hey man, this is going on here.
Right.
And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. No, and I'm like, really? And then I'm like, just go ahead and leave. You know, I'll call my buyer and then I'll call him back and they just get out. And then I'll call the listing agent and be like, sorry, you know, you got this going on. Good luck to you. You know, and move on.
That's another good reason to have a due diligence in the contract.
Right, yeah, if it's your buyer, don't write the what's it called?
Repair procedure. That's
stupid. I don't know what lawyers bring that up. But do a due diligence addendum. But a part of it is you're committing to get the home inspected, okay? And therefore, you're probably going to have to pay someone to do the home inspection. And so what you're gambling when you ratify a contract is you may pay a home inspector and let a house go. That's really what you're committing to, Mr. and Mrs. Home Buyer.
Okay.
You know, that's it. That money's lost to you. It brings up another thing you want to keep a bridle on your lender. This happened to me last week because my buyer 2 weeks ago insisted on using an internet lender, which is fine, don't get me on that topic, but the ever so eager internet lender didn't tell anybody, went ahead and did the appraisal on a house we didn't have the inspection done on. The inspection revealed everything that was legitimately wrong.
Right.
That the listing agent whose parents owned the house somehow had not known, and they had done work on it and didn't remember who did it. And it was a lot. There was like a lake underneath with gooey stuff on the subflooring.
Right.
But anyway, so my guy got stuck with an appraisal and a home inspection done. So you want to keep the lender on a leash until you get through the home inspection.
If you use Prosperity Mortgage, we don't have that problem.
Okay.
Who's your go-to home inspector?
Your share, I know, because they don't want to keep them busy.
I use.
You have several.
I use.
That's what she's on three.
I use several. We have a list. I think we're getting back to getting the list updated. I do.
It is updated now.
I use Tim Trunkle, who's been around a long time. I use him because I have a confidence level with him. He is not particularly fast, but he is competent and he's honest, which are the two things I look for the most. But he's extremely slow at getting you the report. He'll tell me what I need to know. He'll tell my buyer what they need to know. But then getting the report out of him is another 2 or 3 or 4 day process.
So if you've got a due diligence period, watch out with using him.
ACE Inspections has been around a long time. They have a number of inspectors in the field. Some are better than others. So the issue you get is you may get one that is overly zealous and trying to make a name for himself to the boss of the company who is a PE, and they hang their hat on that. And so all the inspectors out there kind of inspect like they're an engineer, and they're not. But they're a good, competent company. John Bench has been around a long time. Been around. He worked for ACE for years. He's been around a long time. Peter Cooten. He's been around a long time as well. So they're, you know.
That list that we have in the office of home inspectors really is not a recommendation from AgentOwned. It's simply saying they have errors and omissions insurance. and it gives you the date of the expiration of that, so you can make sure they are covered. And that's one of the things you want to make absolutely sure of. Yeah.
Where's that?
It's in the kitchen.
How about American?
Who's the name?
Bill Highland Shop.
Bill Jakes? He's been around a long time. Sure.
It's online too,
I couldn't get it on
AgentOwned.com.
So Lisa's saying the list is on the AgentOwned.com site as well.
Oh, okay.
Who's that?
Lewis White.
Lewis White's been around a long time.
That's why you.
I think, yeah.
Lewis White's been around a long time.
But what I was gonna ask you, whenever I get an inspection, when they're the good ones, the builders and the ones that do right, they put on mechanical, they put on cosmetic, they check it for me, and they call me immediately and say, this is all cosmetic, but this is structural, this needs to be done this.
Right.
But these that do 20 and 40 things and throw them all out there, I always consider those not experienced.
That's what I would tend to look at right there, as well as maybe the home inspector wasn't that experienced. You do want a report that has the summary of the bigger items that concern them, the lesser items. Then you're going to have your buyer that wants everything in the world fixed. You're going to have your buyer's agent on your listing is going to send you and say, we want everything on it fixed. You're going to be like, really? Really? You know, and then it's always this classic, I'm dang with my claims.
So don't say that. Use that.
No.
My buyers will never, I always tell my buyers ahead of time, you're buying a used house with lots of issues, and if they're cosmetic, they might not fix them. I tell them that. I mean, I tell them up front, I would prepare them that it's not a brand new home. And if it's a brand new home, you know, they might,
If it's listed for $15,000 above the market or 10% above the market and your buyer wants it, and the seller's hanging their hat on the fact that they want a premium because they're the only one on the neighborhood in the market, then stick it to them on the home inspection. Okay? That's okay.
That's very close. Okay.
All right?
No.
But because they're the ones out there saying they're proud and happy that they got everything, right?
Right. Okay, so let's say it's not a structural issue, it's not a cosmetic issue, but it's a manufacturing issue. Number 14. Hot water heaters, 16-year-old house, there are the original 2 hot water heaters. Nothing's been updated.
Yeah, you run into that a lot. You run into that with air conditioning, with air handlers, with water heaters, and the question comes down to, is it operating? It's beyond its life expectancy. Okay, now if it's starting to bulge, if there's rust on it, this says there's evidence of stains running down the side.
Yeah, there's like a little water rusty stain going down.
I think that the reasonable thing could be is you could ask any plumber to come evaluate it and ask them what they think if it has another 6 days or 6 months or a year. I mean, did you buy the house with the expectation that the water heater is going to be replaced tomorrow? Probably not.
No,
But again, when you're showing that house,
I did not look at the water.
always look at the water heater, the air conditioner, the air handler when you can find it. Look underneath the sinks at the plumbing to see if you see subflooring that's wet.
Okay.
I got big feet for a little guy, and I stomp around in bathrooms on crawl space, see if I feel anything soft and squishy. If you do, you get in front of that somewhat with your buyer because they notice it. You make sure as you're ratifying the contract, you let the listing agent know, hey, go look at this. I don't have it inspected yet, but I looked at it. Right. Presumably you've looked at your house, Mr. Listing Agent. You know, a lot of when you're listing stuff, you don't always look at everything, but a good buyer's agent will go look and go check. And they'll actually read their inspection report. They just won't expect that the listing agent's done stuff that they're not doing, and they're the buyer's agent. So, I mean, you know, that can help a lot. Look at all those things.
Someone like myself, if I looked at a water heater, I mean, if I saw rust and stuff dripping out and saw that it leaked, I'd know that something obviously happened.
Yeah.
So what if this
Then
doesn't have any of that, how will I?
You won't. You won't. I mean, you know, there's things that are easy to, you know, is it in the garage? Is it in the house? Okay? If it's in the garage and it's sitting on the garage floor, it's probably less worrisome than if it's in the house next to the kitchen and it's sitting on the kitchen floor. Is it in a pan with the pipe coming out of the pan that drains to an exterior wall, or is it just literally sitting on the floor? those things you can look at and you can say, hey, you know what? Some home inspector's gonna say this water heater should really be in a pan with a pipe drained out the wall.
Okay.
You know, or there should be an expansion tank on it at the top. You know, things like, but sure, you're not gonna know, you may not, I don't, you know, this duplex up in Somerville, trust me, I walked through it twice. It was a disaster. Everything, but it's all stuff you couldn't see. Underneath, behind the walls, the subflooring. So that's why you have a home inspection, to find those things, in my opinion.
Is it customary to accompany the home inspector on the inspections and observe and just be there while things come up and say you can?
Yes is the appropriate answer.
I just heard several instances where I wasn't there and this is what came out on the paper and.
Look,
Is there a clear distinguish?
if it's your buyer, okay, you should be there. You've been to the property. You may or may not have an idea. You may just have a spider sense or tingling that, hey, this doesn't look right to me, or it looks weird, or, you know, I heard that this neighborhood had this issue going on. You want to meet that inspector and get them started and see what's going on, and see if they see anything off the rip, and see how long they think they'll be there. And if you got to go do something for a little while, you got an appointment, or you're drugged by your cell phone like me, then you leave for a little while and you want to be back there before they're done, when they're towards the end, and see what big items they have.
I just saw several things here that appear to be cosmetic that shouldn't appear because they are in fact cosmetic.
But a home inspector's going to write cosmetic stuff down. They're all going to write cosmetic stuff down.
Well, I know, it's one thing to put it in there for the benefit of the seller. Look, here's some normal maintenance things you ought to keep up with. You got a big pump down the road. It's not something that's involved with the seller having to repair, is what I'm saying. Just because there's little cracks in the ceiling, that's cosmetic.
That's correct. The inspector has no dog in the hunt on what you're going to ask the seller to do. The inspector's there to make a list of what they observed that day in a snapshot appearance of that house. It's not a motion picture. It's what they saw that day, and they're going to make a list. They're going to collect their check. And they're going to list more stuff than less, because that way they're covered. Right? And it's got nothing to do with what you're asking the seller for.
That's the point. It really has nothing to do with that gas seller. And that's the purpose of this session, is to help.
Well, that's what I'm trying to understand, because in a previous state, the home inspection was designed in conjunction with the contract. So you had the stuff that was kind of bound by the contract in your summary. The rest of it, cosmetic, here's the routine maintenance. That was important for the purchaser who had to pay for the home inspector to have. Here's what you refer to, what your house needs to keep up with. But this is what was kind of bound by the contract a little bit. Mechanical issues, heating, plumbing.
And then again, our contract covers that type of stuff.
Virginia.
Yeah.
Right, that covers that type of stuff, and it also has the paragraph that says the seller should be responsible for this. If they refuse to be responsible for these items, then you can negotiate them. You can agree to take it as is, or you can cancel the contract.
But you're right, you send a list like this to the seller, and they get all bent out of shape, like, you know.
Well, this, you couldn't send it just like this, because it doesn't say anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't request any remedy, it's just a summary of things they found.
Miss, what do you recommend? Like, do you recommend the buyer's agent, or can the sellers and the buyers and the home inspection, all of the whole group be there? Or is that
You, in my opinion, if you can help, the inspection time is historically the time for the buyer and their inspector
right?
and their people to go through the house without being followed around by the seller. Does a seller never come to a home inspection? No, I can't say that. There's a lot of helpful sellers that will follow the home inspector around.
I do think the listing agent should be there, though, at least at the end.
So she can hear the experience, we don't have to go over it again.
I don't like to be there while he's doing his thing, because I get in his way, but I start him off, and then I come back at the end, and then he goes over everything I try to get my buyer client to come with me at the end. So he goes over everything. But if I'm there the whole time, he's gonna be busy, occupied talking to me and not doing what he's.
It depends on your buyer. If your buyer's got time, if it's a first-time home buyer, or somebody that hasn't bought in a while, and you think they can have them be there for as much of it as possible, they'll learn.
Yeah, and some buyers are real inquisitive, and they want to be there the whole time. They want to be right there. But I try to tell them, it's fine to be there and to watch what's going on, but don't get in his way.
Right, if you got an investor that's bought a bunch of stuff, they want an inspection report to see if there's some reason to walk away from the deal.
Right.
Other than that, they don't even read it.
Tim, how do you feel about home warranties?
They're all right. They can be helpful.
Safe answer.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen them in the past. Put a new air conditioner in for somebody who just bought a house and the air conditioner died 3 weeks later. It was summertime. I've also seen them in the past come out and be unwilling to service something that wasn't very old because it was missing a widget where there had a gizmo where it needed to have a widget, and they just refused to service it. You know, and nobody knew that it had a widget where there was supposed to be a gizmo. So I think they can be great, but they can. It just depends on. It's been my experience that it depends on who the service provider is that comes out and what mood they're in, more than the warranty company. But you're calling that 800 number and you're committing that $75, and it's a matter of who they're sending out for that particular item.
Well, we need to remind everybody that's looking at it in the room that if you have a sale and you have a home warranty on it, your E&O goes down by 50%, your deductible that you have to pay, should you get sued. And we all know you can get sued if they don't like the color of your hair. So, from that standpoint, you need to have a home warranty.
I didn't know though, in making a decision about what you ask for and don't ask for, if the home warranty might enter into that decision.
It can. I mean, a lot of times, like Liz said, it's a good thing to have on there.
With a 16-year-old house, you'd think that the warranty might be something you would consider.
You would. I guess it depends on if it's any item that remotely got flagged in the home inspection or wasn't referenced in the home inspection, and then you have an issue with it, and you didn't know any better, and the warranty people come out and go, well, this is beyond its useful life. We're not doing anything. Give me my $75 for pulling in your driveway. That does happen. It has happened.
Who do you get to pay for the warranty?
It depends on how the negotiation for the deal would be. You know, you probably want to, I don't know, I guess I'm a little different. If it's my seller that's going to provide the warranty and the buyer wants it, I want the buyer to pick the warranty company. Because I don't want to hear about it down the road. I want them to pick their own, right?
Even though the seller's paying for it?
Even though the seller's paying for it. Because we spec the home warranty company and then they have a problem with it, you know whose phone's ringing? Mine. So it's about mitigating brain damage with it. But on the other, you know, conversely then if somebody else is, I want to be able to pick.
If you have to buy it.
Right, and I want to go through them with my buyer and let my buyer make the decision themselves.
Can we address, anybody else have a question on inspection?
Well, please, can I do a little promotion here?
Yes.
You know, you guys
They know what we do.
global home warranty. And the one advantage of using it is if there's an area that Tim says, you know, I really think maybe we ought to cover that. But the warranty company says typically we do not cover that. They'll either call me or they'll call Liz and say, it's your money, do you want to cover it or not cover it? We'll do it either way.
Mm-hmm.
No other warranty company is going to do that.
No other
Well, that's a really good point, and that is a really strong thing about our warranty company.
So,
Yeah.
I've gotten plenty of those telephone calls.
But on the average, I thought we recommended not to use our company to see older homes or whatever. So
Covers it.
I just want to make sure
We
that,
own the
I do it all day,
So
but.
it reduces our profit.
Carolyn was saying that, you know, if the house is a 16-year-old house with all these problems, you're not going to put a global on it.
Okay, a good point.
And I use AHS now because I've called them and talked to them extensively. And I asked them about what you said through the years. I've been doing it 30 years and they've never done a home warranty because they always come up with a problem. But AHS actually told me that they would not discriminate against the age of the unit anymore or anything.
That's their job on the phone at that time.
That's
Yeah,
right.
and I've been working with them now for several months, and they've done really good until the Freon in there.
But only on old
They
houses.
won't
I think the value of what Boyd is saying is that global, we have the discretion internally
Right.
on what to fix, and if it's the right thing to do, we can step up and take care of it. We're not some distant corporation
Like a-
that's, nothing against HSS, I've used them, I've had good and bad experiences with them over the years.
Okay, anybody else have anything on home inspections or?
Just about detached garages. You
You
do, tell them before they come out, what do you do?
What is the question?
The issue is that if there's been some home inspections done where the home inspectors only inspect the residence and not the detached garage
Right.
or the barn that's in the backyard.
Right.
And the agent doesn't
Right.
realize that's happening.
Right, but then again, that gets back to talking to your home inspector, that the house is advertised with an attached or detached garage. That's part of what your client's paying for. A home inspector that's not gonna go look at the garage, it's probably got electrical run to it, it might have plumbing run to it. It probably has a functioning garage door opener. It's probably got some outlets in it that need tested. It may even have a GFCI if it's near a water source. If a home inspector's not going to go look at the garage, use another home inspector.
You need to talk to them before
If
they go.
they're not gonna look at a storage shed in the backyard, I kinda get that. That kinda makes sense. I had one recently where it was in Sneed Farm, and my lady had a shed in her backyard that over the years she had put a little metal roof on with a little lean-to porch. It was still a shed. And she had a window air unit in it, and there was no water in it. She used it for like a little art studio. There was nothing to it. And the home inspector made an issue that it wasn't properly strapped for a hurricane and for wind. And so I just told we could take the metal roof off, we could take the porch off, we could take the window air conditioner unit out and pull the electrical out of it, no problem, you got a shed. Or we'll remove the shed, what would you like? They chose to keep it as it was, because that's all it is a shed that somebody had, foo-fooed up.
But somebody had a situation where they did not realize that the inspector didn't inspect the separate buildings. And the
I'd never
buyer
use that
wasn't-
inspector again. You gotta look at the garage. If they're not looking at the garage, they're not doing the job.
Well, this particular inspector did not do it, and then when she talked to them later, they said, well, if you'd asked us, we'd have done it for another $100.
You're buying the whole, again, the garage, the house is more valuable with the garage, yes?
But the point about all this is simply that they need to talk to the inspector.
You need to make sure that you understand, especially if you don't know the inspector. I mean, I can't imagine that. I can't imagine the conversation I had with the home inspector if I got back and I found that out. He didn't look at the garage.
So you just need to make sure you know the home inspector you're using, what do they inspect? And make sure you have that
It's like,
understanding.
do they walk a roof when possible, or do they do the visual inspection of the roof? You want one that walks a roof when possible. Do they shine a light in the crawl space, or do they suit up and crawl the crawl space? You want one that crawls a crawl space when they can. You want one that crawls it so far to say, you know what, you can't get past here in the house because the floor drops because of this, that, and the other. That's not a deal breaker, but it's information. It's what you're paying for. I don't do crawl spaces because I don't have a proper breathing. Well, okay, cool. I'll call somebody else.
I have a question. When we bought our home here in Mount Pleasant, the home inspector, could not inspect like the bonus room over the garage. There's those little doors that has some storage area, back behind them. And the cellars had stuff stored in it. I mean, it was packed, and he said, well, I don't have any
Storage doors, yeah.
I have no access. I can't get back there.
Yeah.
And he just wrote that in the report, so that's
right.
okay.
He got in the frog, but he couldn't get in the
Couldn't get in
closet
those
areas.
Closet door things.
Can't fix that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can't expect them to unpack somebody's.
Exactly. I just
No.
Well, Tim, have you ever heard, or do you know if an inspector will make a list of the serial numbers of the appliances?
When possible, they do.
They do, and then I just read an article yesterday that said that you should request the inspector to do that, and then they can go check a database to see if if a piece of equipment that was replaced was not proper, or if there was recalls on equipment that was in the house.
They typically will do that, at least get the serial number off of there and see if anything sticks out. They also will, a very common thing is in a circuit box, if it's a, I don't know, a square D circuit breaker box, if the breakers are not all the same brand,
Okay.
they might flag which breakers are not the same brand. There may be nothing really wrong with that. You could talk to 10 electricians, 6 might tell you don't worry about it, 4 might tell you to worry about it, or maybe vice versa. But that's typically something the seller's going to have to fix. It's an electrical issue. It's not rated for that box. If you call that box maker, they're going to tell you they want their breakers in there. I promise you that. No. And it could also be an insurance issue. You know, if you're on record that the circuit box that's made by whatever circuit box company has got 6 of the 30 breakers aren't from that vendor, you know, the insurance company's always looking for a reason not to pay.
I know, if you could spend a few minutes
Yeah.
talking to the group about, I'm very interested in what we were talking about yesterday.
Okay, so the 2 things that we talked about yesterday were, if you've got buyers in the car with you and you're riding around with them, part of what I've always done, well, I mean, part of what I've always tried to do is I either ride with them, have them ride with me, or I found it very useful over the years to have them follow me in their car. Mm-hmm. And the reason being, you know, people always want you to haul them around. Well, A, you can actually do some stuff between stops. B, what's very valid is Mr. and Mrs. Buyer can talk amongst themselves between the houses without your prying ears in there. And when you're in a house, now if you're riding together, it's fine. If you've got a comfort level with them, you start riding together. But when you first get to know each other, I always give them the option. And I tell them the pros and cons of both. You know, you can hear me talk the whole time, or you guys can actually talk about what you did or didn't like without me hearing it, and fill me in later when you two have had a chance to get on the same page. But when you're in a house with them, and they have some level of interest, it's time to start steering them toward what the world looks like when they go to buy it, if they were to try to buy that house. Okay, and one of the things that you always want to do is emphasize to them that if you're in a neighborhood, you're going to be able to get them a good analysis of what that neighborhood is currently selling for, recent comps, okay, and talk to them about what the market is. If you're a buyer's agent, you want to buy on the lowest end for the best house of what that market's currently trading for. And you want to talk to them about, in your opinion, where you think reality is and where the market is, and where coach them on, you know, I appreciate you wanting to get a good deal, but this seller probably knows what their neighborhood's selling for as well. And if your neighborhood's selling for $400,000 and you come in and offer them $280,000, you're probably going to get rejected, and it's tougher to get that seller back out of their corner. You want to give them an offer that's just short of where they're going to shut you down, but where they will at least come back to you. And it's very important, and the perfect time to do it is when you're walking through a house they kind of like. You know, because invariably one of the first things, well, what do you think this is worth? What do you think this is worth? How many times do you hear that? Engage that conversation. So when you get to the contract point, you don't have them telling you to give a ridiculous price you know is going to get rejected. And don't be afraid to tell them, look, this is likely to get rejected. If this is what you really want me to do, I'll do it. But don't get mad at me. Don't get mad at the seller. Don't get mad at anybody. If you like this house and it gets rejected, it's going to be harder to get that seller to re-engage the next time. It just is. What was the other thing?
Well, that's very important right there, because there's some people, we can all use that. The other thing is, some of the agents asked me to ask you, what is it that you, as a very experienced agent, would prefer that new agents not do?
That's a long day. That's a long day. The agency disclosure form that you go through with people, a couple things on there stick out that you know, one of the services we provide is advice, counsel, and help in negotiation. Okay, our advice and counsel to them is very important. It's not just blindly doing what they say. Yes, we have the obligation to obey their lawful requests, but we also have the responsibility to give them sound advice and counsel if they're speaking crazy things. Okay, and exercise reasonable care and skill. So with new agents in particular, I get this all the time. They want to come with this line, well, I'm just doing what my clients tell me. Yeah, but you're asking me for something. It's a 1980 house. Here's the comps, and you're wanting me to legitimately present this $400,000 neighborhood to my seller at 280 when you've told me the house meets everything they want. And you're not. You're going to irritate my seller. You're going to get me yelled at, okay, for something that you don't have the intestinal fortitude to talk to your buyer about, and you say they want the house. Please, Miss Greenhorn agent or Mr. Greenhorn agent, okay, fresh from the factory, with your 3 showings under your belt, go back and talk to your client a little bit. And they are your client. They've hired you. Okay, don't. The other thing they do is they come, I got clients. No, you don't. You got a phone call. Okay, you've never met the people. Never met them. Never seen them. Never had a moment with them, but you're calling me telling me you got a client. They called off the internet because they saw a listing. It's my listing. You're calling saying you got clients. No, you don't. Be honest with them. Say, look, I got a call off the internet. Okay, I'd like to work with the people. If I can, I realize it's your listing. Can you answer these questions for me? You'll find that the listing agents, the people that have been around the block, open up to you much quicker when you come clean with them right off the rip. I don't know that much about your house, but I got the call, and I'd love to be able to show your property with the right information. What can you tell me about it? Okay, because it drives me bananas when you say, you know, the only who they are. You know, they probably already called me. You know?
That is one of the things that I know that I've noticed over the years is that, and not only brand new agents do this,
No,
experienced agents
sure.
who should know better.
Sure.
Somebody calls them on an ad in the newspaper and they call them their client.
Right.
They call them their listing.
Right.
And they're already representing the seller and they still say they're their client.
Right.
And
And
they're
then
not.
some of the other thing is making mountains out of molehills. Our job's, when the buyer and seller get together, there's a meeting of the minds. Remember the contract class? What all parties had in mind when the contract got ratified. And sometimes, especially in the residential side, it gets really emotional. And one of the things we got to do is keep the emotions tempered down. Like I said, don't let them emotionally buy the house until after the home inspection. Then they can kind of emotionally get invested, and then we got to get through the financing part. It's got to get appraised. I just got one just now, came in $9,000 light on the appraisal. I knew it was going to be light on the appraisal, but you know, it is what it is. Now we got to figure out what to do. But so that's another thing that I think that we fail to do. We look at the market, and especially when you're newer and you're wanting to do something, you'll go out and you'll list something for $15,000 higher than your gut tells you is the highest end you can get it because you want that listing. I think be straight with the people. They're talking to you. They don't know you're brand new, but look them straight in the eye and be like, look, it's a 250 neighborhood, and I'm willing to list it for 269 for this and this and this reason. But if you go for 279, it's not going to work, and you'll be mad at me when I come back and you take 263. You know, so that's the other thing that I think that especially new agents fall into is they overpromise and underdeliver. There's plenty of experience to do that to you, right? I can see that's where you're going. I can already tell. What else?
What else? Anybody got a question? Donna looks like she's ready to say something.
I was waiting for you to mention my name. No, thank you.
What about you prefer them to text, email, maybe a voicemail?
I
call
prefer
phone?
this.
What do you want?
I just learned this, and it rattled my ancient brain. That there's a certain age group, younger people, younger people find it a disruption of their privacy to call them.
Right. Yeah.
So what I've started doing recently, because I read it somewhere, is I've started asking people, what's your preferred method of contact And then what is the best time of day to get a hold of you? Do you prefer text, email, or actual live conversation? And you have to let them know that at some point in time we have to actually speak.
Well, the millennials coming up, Facebook direct message is.
Right. Social media, I put that in there. How do you want? I go far as, do you want a phone call, text message, email, social media, or carrier pigeon? What do you want? And you find that they get back to you, and that's the way that client you communicate with. Now, in that same deal, you're going to have 5 other people you're communicating with that do it differently. But your client especially, you got to cater to. And unfortunately, we got to cater to how the insurance agent wants to communicate. We got to cater to how the lawyer and the paralegal want to communicate.
And the
And the lender and the
What about
process.
new agents, though? What do you prefer new agents do if they're interacting?
With me?
You, yeah.
No, ask the person you're communicating with what's your preferred way of communicating. Whatever your first conversation with them is, whoever you first interacted, try to reply with, hey, thank you, by the way, what's your preferred way to communicate moving forward, because I want to be effective. I don't want to have to be chasing you around.
So you can't go and just say, I hate the phone when you're new and don't call me? You
Right.
need to just ask them, ask you what you prefer.
Well, I can tell you one thing with new agents that drives me out of my mind is they never answer their phone, okay? And they've got incomplete information on their listing, and you ask them in an email or a text, you ask them specific questions, they reply to something different. Okay, so one of the most important things you can do is try to answer what's being asked. And when you ask something specific and you get a different answer, reiterate what you ask and be specific. Be like, listen, how's the best way for you to respond to these 3 questions here? Okay, I get that you put a nice, bright, shiny coat of paint on it, but these 3 questions down here I need answered. How would you like to answer them, or do you have the capacity to answer them? Maybe they don't. There are some out there that don't. That's not a knock. They just don't.
Tim, let me give you an example and see if you can address this. I have a buyer from up north. Doesn't have to be up north.
St. George?
Yeah. But no. Anyway, I have a buyer that is like, he and his wife really like a house in a subdivision. It happens to be the most expensive house in the particular subdivision.
Yep.
The buyer really, they want it, and the seller supposedly wants to sell, but they are an impasse on the price.
Mm-hmm.
And the buyer is saying, well, I don't want to pay that because in 2 years I'll be stuck.
Mm-hmm.
How would you advise? How would you get the sale put together?
Number one, that there's a couple things, okay? Any neighborhood, I don't care where it is, look it up, study it, research it, whatever. Unless we're talking elevated houses, and it's a little different. But even if it is elevated house, I guess it applies.
This is an elevated house.
A master bedroom down sells for more than a master bedroom up. Look it up. The smaller house sells for more per square foot. Look it up. It's better to have the runt house in the big neighborhood than the big house, than to be the biggest. It just is. Look at any neighborhood, read the statistics. Doug Holmes could give you all kinds of charts on that. I'm just telling you it's true. Okay? So you get to the impasse, and you've got the biggest house at the biggest price in a given neighborhood. What in your buyer's best effort, if it's my buyer, I'm going back to that listing agent and pounding on the fact for them to find me a neighborhood where the most expensive house, okay, grows that neighborhood. That most expensive house, all the littler houses benefit from it. Okay, it's going to continually struggle. We can't afford to pay up for it. What would your people be doing if they were in my people's shoes? Now, on the other side of that, the seller of that house, well, your people want it because it's the nicest house here, and they have a desire to be in the most luxurious spot in this neighborhood. So you try to get the number down to where, whatever it is, if it's 20 grand, if it's 15 grand, if it's 30 grand, I don't care. You bridge the gap from so far. Let them both sit. for a little bit while you talk to your client and you get the other agent talking to the other client. Hopefully by this point, you've established some trust with the other agent and you've recognized some competency in the other agent, and both agents want to get it done, and you both understand each other's position. And probably the agents probably agree on the price where it needs to be if you've got that trust. If you don't have that trust and the other agent isn't really registering or won't reply or it's kind of checked out, then you got a problem. But
Okay.
you kind of got to let it sit. You didn't get that number from somebody else, buddy. You know, I'm as close as you got. My people want it.
Well, after they lose a couple of them, they won't mess around the third time.
That's right. You know, the second or, the second or third buyer in that case is usually the one that gets the price, maybe even a lower price than the first buyer would have been willing to pay.
One other thing, and we are running out of time, but if you have buyers and they're trying to decide whether to build a house or buy an already house, how would you advise them in today's market?
Well, do they have any competency or experience in building? Are they here locally? Do they have a contractor or contractors that they're working with?
No, they don't.
Then you're.
Let's just say they don't. They're not even from this area.
How much brain damage do you want? I mean, can you get the house in the neighborhood that's close to what you want? How much is the lot? Do you understand anything that goes into the building process down here, the permitting process? Do you have any soil studies done? Is the neighborhood elevated? Is the neighborhood slab on grade? Is the neighborhood crawl space? The higher the house is built, the more you got to know about that dirt before you even start. Right? Is there any trees on it? Do you have a survey showing the trees on it so you can even take it to someone? If not, do you want to pay for all this stuff, Mr. Buyer, so you can decide if it even makes sense for you to go down the road to build, or do you just want to go buy the house down the street that's already there?
And do you have any knowledge or feel for what builders are charging today per square foot?
As much as they can get. Yeah, the same builder that in 2009 or 10 would build you anything you wanted if you could get the money for all the way down to $110, $120 a foot, or they're now back up to $175, $190 a foot for that same exact house, and they're still screaming they can't make a nickel. Because I've never known a builder that made a penny. They lose money on every deal they come crying to the table.
So an outside builder, then I just heard we are protected with our, like, we bought the lot for our client.
You better have that written in your contract. It needs to be disclosed to your buyer, because otherwise you're not.
So you disclose in there that when
Now, if you do something with like a John Wheeland or a David Weekley, or who's the other one, this local company, Shoemaker, that does build on your lot programs, they probably got something in there that discloses that, you know, you brought them and you're going to get paid X on the vertical, and you'll get taken out for a certain amount on the lot when it closes, because they're probably doing a construction loan. But yeah, you don't presume that, especially with a good old neighborhood local builder that's been around a long time.
So if you buy, your client buys a lot, and then you help them find a builder, and you put the two together, there's no guarantee you're going to get paid on that house.
In fact, you usually don't.
They won't even build on that lot. They'll go build something somewhere else. Okay. That client will refer that builder to 6 other people, and you won't get paid on it. Been there, done that.
Anybody else have anything else?